Okay, this is day two, and I actually got two good teaching posts kind of ready to go, the normal ones that we teach, so I didn't want to really keep talking. But I actually we have another request today for the Kohler Times. Again, this is going out on public forums. This goes on all of my public forums, and the Kohler Times has actually, and the local media have actually, through the history of their so-called investigations of things, they have said, we tried to contact whoever, and we made a request, Facebook or whatever, and they didn't respond. So we'll see if you respond to that. As an organization with a lot of employees that goes back a long period of time, we're going to also ask of you today what you have asked of many others within the community. We want you to give us sort of like a freedom of information request, which you make often because you're media. The public is asking this of you today. We would like to know the history from your Human Resources HR department of how many of your present employees at the Kohler Times have had sexual harassment complaints lodged against them as employees at the Kohler Times. Now, I'm sure you've had some, and don't come out and say we've had none. And so if you don't release that information, that also means you're hiding that from the public. So this is another request for you today. We, the citizens of Corpus Christi, Texas, would like to know how many sexual harassment complaints have been filed against other employees at the Kohler Times, how many have been settled, how much money has gone, have employees been fired? Because you're an organization that must have a long history of some of that happening. And so we simply are making the same request that you, as a so-called self-appointed, self-investigative body, which, why so hard on us, John? You know, when I've talked about these cases and how you have given such favorable coverage to people in authority that have either committed crimes or have a long history of other bloggers and people saying there's connections here, connections with illegal drug activity, those in authority, connections with all types of stuff. And some of it even takes place right around the courthouse. And I see, a lot of times law enforcement vehicles riding up and down those streets, fine. I go to the cathedral on the top of the hill there. And I think even the local people that have been here for a long time question, how could judges and people in authority escape the investigations? And the only ones that have done that in this community, those that have corruption, are Hispanic individuals. And I've noticed that. And the only thing I could imagine is that race is playing a role in this. Race is playing a role in this. And for the sad rogue employee that now the whole country is wanting to know the name of the Corpus Christi rogue employee that put up those barriers on Shoreline, that the Corpus Christi Kohler Times felt somehow it was in their interest to put pressure on the mayor of Corpus Christi to drop his investigation. And if the name of that employee that the Kohler Times has gone out of their way to cover for is a Hispanic person, that would show us as the community that you have targeted particular individuals. You made a request from the courthouse of how many sexual harassment complaints were filed against Judge Guy Williams, a white judge. And don't forget, that white judge, Guy Williams, who is a veteran, he himself stood up to some power structures within this community. I watched those cases in the Rosas case. And the local police, and I'm going to give them a good thing right now in a minute, I want to remember this. But the local police obviously were mad because in the Rosas case, there were officers that were shot as well as Mr. Rosas was shot. And I don't blame the young officers, the officers at that scene. I blame the leadership that allowed a raid like that to happen. That's the infamous flash bomb case. But when that case was settled and Mr. Rosas was found not guilty, and I won't cover it all, I remember the DA at the time, it was Skirka and all, they were upset. But Guy Williams, he had recommended, he did not side with the inner circle of this community. And he angered some of the inner circle of this community because he said, I would also recommend Mr. Rosas, he said, to bring a civil suit against the district attorney and all. He angered a lot of insiders here. And then it wasn't too long after that the Cola Times, then Mr. Williams the Cola Times investigated that white judge. And they investigated various alleged road rage incidents. And as I looked at that, I said, I'm wondering, because they did such a defense for the other judge, Vinales, and actual injuries and almost killing people in multiple, and they defended him. And so the other particular judge that's been named before that has connections within cartels and everything, I noticed the Cola Times did a really wonderful, the articles about that particular family that's been a long-time Hispanic family in South Texas. They always did really wonderful articles about them and the family. But yet, a lot of the locals, people that know stuff, know there's corrupt connections with that judge. But yet the Cola Times has always, anything they've ever written and investigated, it's always been good about that side. And it shows me you play that. So, yes, we want to know. Nick Jimenez and all, Tom Whitehurst and all of you, have there ever been, the whole history, the same you have asked of Guy Williams and many in this community, what is your history of sexual harassment, complaints, and or settlements with the Corpus Christi Cola Times? Do you understand that media organizations send out these freedom of information requests to every entity, whether it's in this county or other places, but yet there has never been, to my knowledge, them themselves releasing and being open with the public. Now, I'll try to remember this to mention it. One of the homeless friends of mine that's been back and forth, and sometimes my friends, they get into it with each other, and then there's like tension, like, you know, and they know I'm friends with this one, I'm friends with that one, and I'm trying to be friends with all of them, even when they have their disagreements or fights and stuff. So sometimes I'll see them and maybe they'll avoid me because they know I hang out with this one. But look, I don't play like the sides. I just try to help them all. But one of the homeless guys, I won't mention his name, but he's kind of been back again. But look, I made videos a few months ago about something that happened with him, and a off-duty cop ran into him on his bicycle. And I was mad. I was outraged when I heard the story, and I heard it from a few people, and so I made videos like this, and I particularly said, and you know, he's a veteran. He was a ranger, I guess, in the Marines, but he was a veteran, but he also did a lot of prison time after he got out of the military. And I particularly always was upset when some of the homeless guys, and then some that are veterans, which some are, and then they're also treated badly. And that upsets me too. But you know, I've seen him this last few days, this last week. And he said, you know, John, they came up to them the other week, there's some things were going on. He said, and each time they've come up to me now, they come up to me with respect, and they even say when they leave, we thank you for your service. And I spoke about that. And so what I would take is that they maybe watched some of the videos possibly and said, look, we want to make sure we're respecting them if we got to deal with them. And so I just give credit that I felt that was good. That was good. That the chief himself said, look, we're dealing with the public. We want to make sure we give due respect. And he told me, this homeless guy, he said, John, they have, even the officer that had hit him, he said he was nice to me and they respected me. So that's good. That the purpose of shining light is to see change. And if people change, if entities change, if people you speak truth to power, then you give them credit for that. And I do want to give credit for that. That was something that had recently come up, and I didn't think I had a chance to mention it. So I wanted to mention that. And the reason I'm so tough on the Kohler Times is because as I watched this scenario here for many years now, you should, if you're going to fight injustice and corruption, and some media organizations do indeed do a good job, but I noticed that they focus, the local media focus. If there's injustice and it's a white judge, or even if a white judge is murdered, but then when you have some of that going on with Hispanic judges, the media here actually will attack if you try to expose corruption within that particular entity. That's a disgrace, because you have enabled, by your unwillingness to be fair and balanced. And this is an honest request that anybody in any community should be able to ask of you. You've made multiple requests of the sex harassment suits and so forth, and I'm sure the Kohler Times is a very long-term entity in this community. I'm sure you have settled many. And we're living in a day. Chris Matthews, you know, where MSNBC actually is located. I've walked past their building over the last some years. They're in New Jersey. I think right now they're in Secaucus. It's a little, for the uninformed media of this location, because they're very uninformed here. Secaucus is a little town close to where I grew up. My town, called North Bergen, was right close to the Hudson River, and Manhattan's right on the other side. I was telling, as a matter of fact, that homeless guy just mentioned, because he was talking about Frank Sinatra. I said, I was born in Hoboken, New Jersey. That's Frank Sinatra's where he was born. He kind of brought that up. So Secaucus, that area of the country, is really the media center of the world, to be honest with you, New York City. And so in that area, I used to walk past the MSNBC building. I think at one time they were in Fort Lee, that's right by the George Washington Bridge on the New Jersey side, and then Secaucus. But now Chris Matthews, MSNBC, now it's been revealed that he too had some sexual harassment claims that were filed. And look, what we're seeing in the country is media figures who have had these types of things. The Kohler Times has called out Blake Farenthold for the investigative. How many have you had? There's Tom Whitehurst Jr., there's Nick Jimenez, the others mentioned on yesterday's editorial board. Have had any? And within that organization today, if you have covered that up, we want light to shine on that. Those employees should immediately be fired. There are certain crimes where people went to the mayor, this is even within the last year, and handed over things, evidence. And some of these things were covered up, and these are big crimes. And I thought, wow, the little cabal that you have in South Texas. People watching this from international organizations, and they said we want to relocate to that, possibly go to the South Texas area and the port and all. They should be aware of how this little cabal is run out of this town. They should be aware of all of the political machinations. I wouldn't doubt that Mr. Jimenez, long-term families, others that have corruption in authority within this county, and community. I wouldn't doubt that they sit down regularly, maybe at some taqueria. And maybe the judges ask, say, man, the heat's on us because we've had all this history of collusion with the drug cartels or whatever. We need to make sure anybody that's honing in on us, we got to take those people down. I wonder if that's how some of their discussions go. So the country would know. That's the little thing going on in this part of South Texas. That's what you see in this part of South Texas. I'm not so concerned about the stupid barriers. But that just showed you. You know, there's a verse that says, Jesus himself said, they strain at a gnat and they swallow a camel. And I look at how the so-called little media things that you do here, and you got camels going down. You got big stuff. And those that are aware of it, they kind of look at it. Say, oh yeah, that's been going on for a long time. So this is request one. We'll see if the Colder Times will come out in a public forum today. And just as the same light that they ask of other entities, we ask for you to completely give us the history of the sexual harassment complaints that have been filed against any other employees at the Colder Times. How many had been settled? Has Mr. Jimenez or Tom Whitehurst Jr., have they had any filed against them? Are there any things going on right now at that Colder Times entity? Have people in the past tried to possibly write an expose on some of the corruption? And have you pressured your own employees to be silent about it? Have you tried to write articles to obstruct justice within this community? You're not above the law.